Hi, and welcome to my romance reading challenge, episode number 2. I have these 3 books here, and to be quite honest with you, at this point, I'm not even entirely sure whether I like romance. So I don't know how this challenge is going to continue, but at the moment, it's looking a little bit dire. But let's break it down book by book. So let's start with Emily Henry, Book Lovers. It was the book that I was very excited about. It was one that I was looking forward to. And luckily, and I am actually very happy about that, I had an absolute blast with it. It's a small town romance. Our main character, Nora, is a literary agent. To no surprise, Emily Henry really likes writing books where main characters are either writers, journalists, or work in the publishing industry in some shape or form. Our main male character, Charlie, is an editor, and he's a very cutthroat one. And they kind of clash. They aren't best of friends. They have met professionally a couple of times, and it has not gone very well. They have incredibly different and clashing personalities. They're both very dedicated to their job, and they're both very serious about what they do. And at the beginning of the book, we discover that Nora's love life is not amazing. She is very guarded when it comes to her personal space and her relationships that just tend to not work out. So at some point, she sort of gives up. And at the start of the book, Nora is in the middle of another breakup, and her sister Libby suggests that for a month they go and stay in a small town. And that small town is actually a setting for one of the books that Nora is an agent for. So they pack their bags, they book an Airbnb, and for a month they're living in this small town. And Libby has a whole list of things that she thinks Nora needs to do to get to know that small town, to try a different lifestyle, to experience new things, and to hopefully find love. But to her huge surprise, Nora keeps bumping into Charlie, of all people, because it turns out that it's Charlie's hometown. And obviously, I'm not going to spoil, but I think people who have read enough romance will know how the story is going to end, so there's going to be no surprises for you. It's by no means the most original book I have ever read. I mean, this is the 5th Emily Henry book I've read, so I kind of know what to expect, but this is the good Emily Henry writing. These are the good, funny, exciting, entertaining Emily Henry characters. They're always very relatable, they feel very human, and they feel very real. So I genuinely had an absolute blast reading it. It's probably my top 3 Emily Henry book. I would highly recommend it. I think if you like Emily Henry, if you like romance, if you like small town romance, it's somewhat of an enemies to lovers. I think you're gonna really like it. So 5 out of 5, I highly recommend it. And at that point, after Book Lovers, my expectations were so high. I was on a roll. I thought we're starting a month with such a strong first romance, and I was sure that the other 2 would also be a hit. But unfortunately, that was really not the case. And as my second pick, I went for Nora Goes Off Script by Annabel Monaghan. I've heard it's somewhat similar to Book Lovers, or at least has the same vibe, but unfortunately, I had to DNF it. And now, hear me out, the DNF was not because I think it's poorly written or because it's a bad book. I was at the very, very start of it when I kind of just started feeling like this is the story that I have read quite a few times, and that is considering that I haven't read that many romances. And it's not even my favorite kind of a romance story. Now, it's somewhat similar to Emily Henry, I will admit, but the difference is that I really, really love Emily Henry's writing, and she's about as much of that kind of romance that I need. So when I started reading Nora Goes Off Script, I just sort of felt a little bit underwhelmed and not entertained enough to continue. So I have decided to DNF it. But to be honest with you, I have so many books on my TBR, and especially romance books on my TBR, and romance isn't even my favorite genre. So I do genuinely feel like if I'm not enjoying the book, there isn't any point in enforcing it. Even though it's a very short book, I think my DNF was somewhat justified. I haven't felt the need to pick it back up ever since I stopped reading it, and that was a good few days ago. So I think it's going to be a DNF for me, and unfortunately, I can't say much more. I'm not going to rate it. I'm not going to recommend it or not recommend it. I think it's probably a great romance book, and it was fairly highly rated on Goodreads. So if it's your cup of tea, read it. I'm sure you will love it. But I unfortunately will move on to something else. And the last pick for the month was The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. And I was wrong in my introduction video. Christina Lauren is not a singular author. It's a pen name for 2 authors, Christina and Lauren. They're friends and they have been writing together for quite a while now. We also have Unhoneymooners by this same author sitting on my shelf. And I had quite high hopes for The Paradise Problem. I have heard quite good things about it by different people. I know it's a pretty highly rated on Goodreads, so I thought I would have a blast. And the premise and the synopsis actually sounded pretty fun. We have two characters. We have Anna Green and we have Liam Vest, and they are married just purely out of convenience. They both needed housing, and getting married was the easiest way to do so. But now, almost 5 years later, Anna, who thought that they have been officially divorced 3 years ago, discovers that they're still married because Liam did not realize, but there's a clause in his inheritance where he needs to be married for somebody successfully for 5 years to get the full inheritance. Otherwise, he misses out on $100 million. So Liam reaches out to Anna and he explains the entire situation. And in exchange for quite a sizable sum of money, they agree to go to his sister's wedding for 10 days to a remote private island where they have to play a happy married couple. Now, up to that point, it sounded like a fascinating read. I really enjoyed main characters. I thought they were quite fun. I really like the setting. I like the idea of this rich, powerful family and Anna, who completely painfully does not fit in. But when they started interacting with each other on the remote island, it became a little bit insufferable. So the housing situation on the island is a little bit questionable. They live in these bungalows, and they have see-through showers. So them have never been in any romantic or sexual relationship. For the first time, they have to shower in front of each other and see each other naked, and that inevitably leads in the entire relationship just being about how hot they think the other person is. And I thought that was a little bit over the top and slightly unnecessary because there's absolutely no mention of whether they like or don't each other's personalities. They just kind of keep talking about how hard the other part is, and I found that very, very boring eventually. I also started getting to the point where the family that is supposed to be fairly insufferable is just a little bit too insufferable. And when you have a combination of a fairly insufferable rich family that I absolutely cannot relate to, unfortunately or gladly, and a pretty insufferable couple that just keeps sexualizing each other without including any actual romance in their relationship, around the mark of the page 120, I was finding it a little bit too boring and not interesting to continue reading. And on a page 140, I have made a decision to DNF it. And it's been a couple of days now, and after those couple of days, I have not decided to go back to it. I have never thought that I want to know how the story ends. I'm pretty sure I know how the story ends, so to be quite honest with you, I don't really have any interest in continuing. And with that same success, I think I'm actually going to declutter On Honeymooners. On Honeymooners has lower reviews than The Paradise Problem. I have read some of those reviews and it doesn't look very promising. So I'm now in a bit of an interesting situation where I sort of look at my shelf of romance books and feel like the vast majority of them will probably be something that will feel similar to The Paradise Problem, where the entire premise of their relationship and the entire basis of their relationship is just being sexually attracted to each other. Or if it's the same case as Nora Goes Off Script, where it's kind of the same niche or the same vibe as Emily Henry, that Emily Henry is successfully filling up for me, and I don't need many more books of that style. So I'll see what I want to do in the future. Maybe episode 3 will be sort of a bit of a declutter episode or a bit of a read it or unhold it kind of an episode where I try to speed through some of these books and see if I can maybe declutter some of them. Because I'm moving in September, so the less books I have to carry with me, the best. So that might be actually a pretty good idea. And then I can continue with the challenge with quite a fewer books that I have in the moment, and maybe that would be my way of discovering what kind of romance I prefer to read. So, with that said, if you have read any of these 3 books, let me know what you thought of them. Let me know if you agree or if you don't. Let me know what kind of romance you prefer, and if maybe you have some recommendations based on some of my complaints about The Paradise Problem and Nora Goes Off Script. Maybe you can tell me of some of the books that I haven't picked up yet that I would be an absolute fan of. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.